Okay, class, pay attention. There are certain things that I'm expecting from you. Last week you spent your time in the library, quite a lot of time. In return, I'm expecting a submission from each one of you into your sketchbooks which are dedicated to theory of architecture, and you have to take some examples from architecture or painting or any visual art. You were supposed to do this last week, and today I'm expecting your sketchbooks with those examples. Have you done that? I shall be collecting your sketchbooks at 4 p.m. today. When did you ask Anusha for the sketchbook? Yeah. Bye. Can I see the gate pass? Okay. Jawad is going for cousin brother's marriage. Wish him. Then, huh? Yeah, yeah. Wish him. Okay, don't cry. He'll be back. Yes, Sharanya. Has everybody entered their attendance? Proxy. Yeah. Mm, yeah. Soundarya, read the first point. Art Novu. Yes. Novu means new. A new movement in art. So, when you write about expressionism today in your sketchbook, you have to define what art nouveau is. You cannot simply throw words, terminologies like that. Each terminology you will have to define what that is depending upon the research that you do on that. Now, art nouveau principally a decorative convention turned to bionic and geomorphic forms. Bionic and geomorphic. Take a wild guess what kind of forms can these be in architecture? What kind of form of this building is? Is it bionic? Is it geomorphic? Simply. This building follows a form of Cartesian geometry. You know, there are three axes, x, y, z, simple, okay, platonic solids. That is what Cartesian geometry is. What is bionic and bionic is something inspired from biology. Is your body following the Cartesian geometry anywhere? Why? Because this is a biological form which is bionic. Geomorphic. On this planet Earth, apart from the apparent horizon line, is there anything straight? Is there a straight line existing in nature? So that is also not following the Cartesian geometry, that is geomorphic forms. So what happens in this picture shown here, they say that this is art nouveau. Telling you these points, can you support this design under this art nouveau movement? Let's go to next slides, you will understand it better. However, Art Nouveau consumed itself in need of some more extravagant forms. Architects even spilled over exoticism, irrationality, and ultimately this intense exaggeration was called expressionism. Even in the last lecture we discussed elaborately what expressionism and the characteristics of this movement were. These are a few more to that. Is there anything that you don't understand in this slide? Have you heard of this name? Not bizarre. Antonio Gaudi. Are you aware of this name? What? Heard somewhere. As Antonio Gaudi was not an architect by qualification. He was a designer who has built very few buildings, and most of his buildings were organic in form. These are a few examples of his work. This is a very famous building called Casablanca. And he is Saundarya has something to share. Let's see if you want to share with everyone. Whatever you wanted to share. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Please share.
I don't have
Please
anything.
share. Or you have something important to share. Please tell the entire class and let this record go into the history of Mickens. Now this person is the torch holder of this movement, Expressionism. Apart from buildings, he has been involved into extreme engineering, pushing the limits of structural engineering, with the fundamental theme of preoccupation with biomorphic fantasy. But the real birth of this ism is bound up with traumas of World War One. Like I told you in the previous to previous lecture, that whatever you see is not the thing. There are undercurrents, so you need to understand the real communication behind the symbol that is in front of your eyes. Barred from the realities of the construction sites, the architects were free to build castles in air. This is a very uh, discouraging statement for the people who've been following this ism, because uh, this ism is notorious for getting projects not built because they were so ambitious that they were not built or built after 50 years or after the architect had died. Let's skip this. Since you have been skipping on your assignments, I shall be skipping on my presentations too. Now this is one iconic structure. You may or may not be aware of it, the Einstein Tower. It is done by Eric Mendelssohn. You have to find out about these architects, research on them, a few projects, what their style was, and what made them torch bearers of a particular movement. Uh, you are getting disturbed by your friend's behavior, you are free to kick them out. I encourage this such activities. What? Wha- okay. When did Einstein die? When when you see that this tower was built in Potsdam in it was started in 1917 and finished in 1921. So why do you think that this tower would have been named after? This was not only on his he was alive. Einstein was alive, but he was on the verge of dying. So this was a laboratory named after him, and it was designed by this famous architect. Should I take this question? Darshini, should I take Darshini's question? Because when I answer to your questions, I'm consuming the entire class's time. So I'm asking them, should I entertain this question? Yeah. Yes, Darshini, what is it? What? Uh, Darshini wants to ask, this was a monument or this was a lab? When a building is monumental in its scale or in its character, it is known as monument, but every monumental building has a function to follow. Okay? So function wise, design wise, this building was designed like a laboratory. Eventually in history, it proved to be monumental. Anthropomorphic form. What is morphism? Undergoing transformation. Morphism also means if there is a structure inside something, morphism also means to cover it. It is like a covering or a cocoon. So that means morphism. And anthro is, it has to do with human proportions. So somewhere this building was coined or derived from human proportions. So morphism and anthropometry, when you combine, and there are so many other words which are forcefully combined to describe few architectural buildings. This building was built in brick and covered with concrete. Yeah. Here, when I say cover, the inside structure may or may not be the same what it appears to be. So they say that even though it is a brick building, there was some concept or there was something which led to cover this building in concrete, which is called, which is why expressionism. Just take down this name, and I'm going to skip this slide. You have to make notes, which is going to be your assignment, and you would be judged and evaluated upon that. Rudolf Steiner, his strong expressionist designs of second geothermal house of speech and surrounding buildings. This is a project which was built during that period, 24 to 28. What is so different about, even though this was built some 100 years ago, till date, did you come across any building which resembled one of these images? So that is when we say that the buildings are following Art Nouveau, and the concept behind designing these buildings was something else, and it was classified under expressionism. He was one of the torch bearers of this movement, Rudolf Steiner. This is a very, very famous project. Port terminals have been always explored by architects to its limits to for to to reincarnate their fantasies in reality. And airport terminals have been always the soft spot for experimenting, because lot of money funding from the nation to airport terminals are generally thrown out as competitions, and in competitions people freak out on their fantasies. 3. Why are you so blank? These are the buildings which are on the interface through which maximum number of exposure is going to happen with regard to the users. That is, this is sort of a hub where maximum number of people are going to come and go. And this, and fourth, this is going to be the symbol of that city or that nation. Aerosaarinen. Soon you would be studying this terminal. Sooner or later, everybody ends up studying this. Are you aware of this building? Apart from what is the slide, is there something that you know about this building? Already you knew, because this is a familiar, famous building. Why do you think that this building is, first of all, are you convinced that this building is falling under this classification of expressionism? So there are no two views about it, right? I'm happy for that. And then, what else do you know about this building? Who is the architect? Is this one of your favorite buildings? So whenever you say that this is my favorite building, you should know the architect. Yeah, who said that? Yeah. How did you know about it? Yeah, good. Nata helps. When this building was designed, even this was a competition. There's a brief story. This was a competition won by this architect, but the way he had designed it, this building was not built for 25 years because the technology then did not exist. Only after 25 years it was feasible to build this building. By the time it was built, architect was already almost on his deathbed. A few things about Sydney Opera House. Instead of me telling it to you, I would like to see these details in your assignments. Guggenheim Museum, Bilbao. Which is a more famous building, Sydney Opera House or Guggenheim? Franco Gehry. Now, when we talk about sustainability, what is sustainability? I will give you a cue. This project has been in controversy ever since it was conceived, ever since it was built. This project has been under controversies by the various environmentalists. Now, tell me, what is sustainability? Sustainability is something that this building is not meant for. At the same time, the question of sustainability has arisen because of this building. Can you please tell me what sustainability is? Have you heard of this name, this term? What could, throw a wild guess, what could be sustainability? Find it out. Assignment. Buildings are powerful essays in geometric form and materials. Now, if through the whatever you can see, do you see that he's been exploring organic forms? You know, this is not the regular stereotype building block. Whole building is made in irregular shapes, having not a single straight wall. The big surprise of the vast Guggenheim Bilbao is that despite its complexity and unorthodox appearance, you never feel lost or confused inside. Now if I ask you, till now you were looking at buildings which were classified as expressionism. Could you put the same building examples under this movement? Can you? The Guggenheim Bilbao, it is a symbol of a ship. Close. So the same examples of buildings. हेलो, लेक्चर में हूँ. Okay. Now the same buildings, like there are twin cities, for example, Sikandrabad and Hyderabad. Even though there are two different cities actually, they are called twin cities and they are treated as one. So in case of these two movements, actually they are two different movements, but they are so similar to each other that roughly expressionism is the movement under which symbolism falls, roughly. So we are studying both of them together. Mm, who wants to read this? Any volunteers? Not in your mind. Who wants to read it aloud? Now, symbolism came to the fore in the late 19th century with its roots and arts and literature, largely a reaction against naturalism, realism, and movement with largely in favor of spirituality, the imagination, and dreams. So, this is where fantasy comes in. I am going to copy these presentations onto this system where you are expected to take notes for both these movements for as your assignment. Who's done this? So Rupert. Okay, we found out. This is done by Rupert. Rupert, I want you to explain what this symbol is. I want you to explain what this symbol is, what is it called, why did you do this, and where did you copy this from? Yeah, where did you copy this from? Did you invent it? Did you invent this symbol? Quiet, guys. Listen, listen. You want this? Yeah, Rupert, can you share your views about this symbol, please? What is this symbol called? Okay, what does that mean? Which language is it? It's Japanese. What does that mean? Okay. What I see is there's a lot of work that you will have to do today. You have to do a lot of assignments. You have to make many notes so that, because that is going to be the only evaluation criteria for this subject. Your sketch books. Now, if I ask you, how come something which is done so many thousands of years ago, even before we were aware of these isms, etc., how can something created at that time falls into this category? Huh? because there are some structures which are so iconic, you know, they transcend through time, and they are being followed and repeated as symbols even in the contemporary era. What is this example? The example Louvre, the museum Louvre is not the example here to be shown. Only this is a post thought given to the museum. The museum is a very classical looking building, but to celebrate this in the contemporary era, it was celebrated using a symbol to make it iconic on earth as the pyramids, by consciously keeping those things in mind, that it is going to resemble the same proportions of the pyramids of Egypt. This was done in a new material to symbolize contemporary styles by using different materials, which is glass, and uh, using modular kind of a design and the pattern. Skip. This is an important example. The Jubilee Church, Rome. It is done by which architect? Good at reading. Okay. Tell me, what is this? Jewish museum done by? In the first semester, one sheet was displayed here, some sheet by a senior. Yes. So that this is that Jewish museum by Daniel Lipskind. This is one example also for expressionism, because the underlying current, apart from the museum itself, it is a symbol for the atrocities done on whom? On the Jews. This is a museum which is a symbol. What is the symbol for? I just told you. This museum is a symbol for the atrocities done on the Jews. Same example which was there in expressionism stays here as much correct under symbolism, which is Sydney Opera House. Okay, why are you so happy to read Tadao Ando? What do you know about Tadao Ando? Is he from Pondicherry? What have you learnt about Tadao Ando? Shh, girls. What? Natural lighting even happens here. Loyal, what his work is about, you can read from here. Concrete! Concrete. All of the Tadavando's work, his material is his religion. He does not leave that. Concrete. Exposed concrete. So clearly buildings are imbibed with embody multi-leveled and multi-purpose meanings and messages. They provide not only structures, form but text, context and meaning to social and cultural life. So this is how you need to read a building. Even if it is your personal philosophy, a philosophy should exist. You should be able to read a building. It is like reading between the lines. And especially if a letter is handwritten, you get to read even more than the content, right? So architecture is like that, like handwritten letters. You have to read between the lines. So this is when you find the meaning of architecture. Tadao Ando's same project, Osaka. When I say you got to read a building, that means that piece of architecture is also a model of communication. Is it not so? Please argue with me if you agree or disagree in any case. Is a piece of architecture a model of communication? It's a building, it's not meant to talk anything, it's not meant to communicate. But when I ask you what is the meaning, what is it communicating to you, disagree with me that it is not a piece of communication, it is simply a building. How can a building communicate? See, the first what? We have crossed that level of interpretation in the last lecture itself. We are way beyond that. We have crossed Taj Mahal and the symbol of love. Now we are into communication. See, the first ever communication that a building does is one, just by looking at the kind of the building, you know what is the probable function of that building. Yes or no? So one thing that the building communicates on a very superficial level is its function, or the category in which it falls. Is it a public building? Is it a private building? Like meant for a man or meant for a big crowd, or even if it is meant or not for a man. There are buildings which are not meant for people. Can you give some examples of that? Cowshed is a very nice example of that. No, fifth year studio, it is meant for people. There are buildings like bridges which are not meant. Just by looking at the monumental scale of it, you understand that it is not meant for people. There are buildings which are so minuscule. What? Bridges are meant for vehicles. There are pedestrian bridges. There are pedestrian bridges which are meant for people, but the bridges are not meant for people. It's meant for vehicle and its community and its commune. Harbors, dockyards meant for ships, not directly for people. It does not shelter a man. So, so this is at a very superficial level that a building communicates the first thing, which is the primary purpose of the architecture. But what I mean by function is its primary purpose, Shafiur, can you read? Which is this building? It is an interior of two buildings and a part of one famous building. Can you identify this building? Can you identify this? This is not in Dubai. Istanbul. What is this? Hagia Sophia. It has got the biggest dome. This is a very famous building. Rupert just told me about it. This is Taj Mahal. Yes. It. What is a Taj Mahal? It is a tomb. It is not. So that is. I'll tell you where this is. This is. This is not in India. This temple is called Angkor Wat. What's your name? Tanigai. Yeah, Tanigai. Can you read it out? Tanigai is reading. Please listen. What is connotations? Connotations. Feel you are close by. Connotation. What is feel? It is close by, but it is not that. For this symbol, yin and yang. Somebody said male female. Somebody said balance. Somebody said something else. So these are different connotations of one symbol. It means different meanings depending upon the perception and the perspective that you are wearing. The glasses that you wear also is one connotation through which you see. Yeah, continue. symmetry. It is called symmetry. Yeah. So what did you understand, Tanigai? What? Now the materials used here have different connotations, even though it has got the same function. A compound wall and a gate. If they are using wrought iron rods and this kind of a thing, people will understand that this is sort of a graveyard. If you're using these things, a wooden gate and a simple compound wall, it is a house. So these are some collective consciousness amongst everyone, and we take bearing from that collective consciousness and try to design in such a way that to the main mass of the people it should communicate that one correct thing. There are connotations that a uh, small amount of people will are going to misunderstand what kind of an architecture this is, especially the aborigines or people who are not exposed to the civilized cities. Apart from them, everybody will understand that this is a residential kind of a building. So, and they will understand this is a graveyard. You consciously are not going to use such railing for your house in the compound, right? So this is what is communication through architecture, symbols and expressionism. There are different connotations. You have to be aware of the materials and the symbols that they make. For, for example, when there are grill in the window and a fabricator is given a job to make, he's been given raw materials, a few rods, and he has to make some pattern into that. What if he makes this such a such kind of a thing? Is he going to make? So this study called semiotics is important. You have to be aware of the kind of plans that you make and the various connotations it has in different civilizations. Saundarya, can you read it out about this person? Did you understand? Can you explain, Saundarya, what you just read? What was his contribution to architecture in the field of architecture? What? I'm sure that we would not be having this book called Words and Buildings, but what this person has tried to convey through his writings is each building has a character, context, design, flexibility, form, formality, function, history, memory, nature, order, simplicity, space, structure, transparency, truth, type, and users. These are the least communications that a building does. Least. And beyond that, then you can philosophize upon your own interpretations, on your own connotations, what a building or a meaning of architecture is. So that would be all for today.